Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining me for this special announcement today. I'm Dr. Eric Castillo, and I was recently named the first Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer for the Alamo Colleges District. I am ready to lead in this new role and firmly believe that we, in collaboration and in solidarity, will cultivate a district and college culture that affirms and respects all who call the Alamo Colleges District their academic or professional home. I'm honored today to be here with students and employees from across the district to celebrate the news of a new partnership that will directly support our mission of empowering our diverse communities for success. Today, we will welcome several guests to share more information about the announcement and also to tell us more about what to expect as part of this initiative. Please utilize the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen if you would like to ask questions or share perspective. This morning, we will hear from our Chancellor, Dr. Mike Flores, and President of San Antonio College, Dr. Robert Vela. A familiar face, Andrea Vocab Sanderson, San Antonio Poet Laureate, alongside Nicholas Blevins, lead vocalist and guitarist from The Foreign Arm, will help us to celebrate and reflect on the occasion with a special performance. Racial healing and racial equity consultant, Mi Moa, and I will have a conversation about racial healing and transformation, followed by remarks from Mona Aldana Ramirez, San Antonio College's Director of Student Success for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusive Excellence. First, I'd like to welcome Mona to share with us San Antonio College's land acknowledgement. The acknowledgement recognizes Native Americans' longstanding relationship to the land and our presence on it.
Good morning, and thank you, Dr. Castillo. And with everyone's permission, I would like to read this land acknowledgement that was given to us by the American Indians of Texas at the Spanish colonial mission. We acknowledge this place of abundant rivers, springs, caves, desert, and hill country as being inhabited consistently for over 12,000 years by people who left their marks as stories on rocks, as petroglyphs for remembrance, and as codes for storytelling and timekeeping. We acknowledge the San Antonio River as Yanaguana, spirit waters in Pajalate, as a source of life for this city, and commit to protecting her, all her tributaries and connected waters, and this land called Texas as Somisec to the Istokana people who are called Carizo Come Crudo by the Spanish today and for future generations. We acknowledge this place known as San Antonio as a traditional homeland of many Native American peoples who are called Coahuiltecan by Spanish records. 200 tribes, bands, clans were documented in historical records and include the Payaya, Auteca Paguame, Jarame, Pompopa, and Borrado, as well as other Aboriginal peoples such as Acarizo Come Crudo, who continue to carry their traditional lifeways. We acknowledge these indigenous various communities as the traditional people of this land now called San Antonio, Texas. We acknowledge this homeland that would later include Comanche and Lipan Apaches in the 1700s as a place that is now home to nearly 30,000 urban Indians, spanning from tribes across the North, Central, and South Americas, who continue to sustain their traditional languages and customs. We acknowledge that the 6 flags which have flown over our city during the last 300 years have never fully honored Indigenous people who continue to be excluded from processes that directly affect their cultural traditions, ancestors, and future descendants. We acknowledge the willingness of our communities to seek healing for all the harms of colonization which are still present in San Antonio, reflected in the unequal distribution of resources, housing, education, and access to healthcare. We acknowledge the opportunity to promote equity by centering the needs of Native peoples in the decisions regarding public policy, service delivery, and distribution of resources in a manner that accounts for historical realities. We acknowledge the resiliency, tenacity, and ability of Native Americans to survive, heal, and thrive despite the systemic oppression they have faced, and commit to celebrating their successes. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mona, for helping us to express our gratitude for the land and those who inhabit it. To recognize the land is an expression of gratitude and appreciation to those whose territory we reside on, and a way of honoring the Indigenous people who have been living and working on the land from time immemorial. It is important to understand the long-standing history that has brought us to reside on the land, and to seek to understand our place within that history. Land acknowledgements do not exist in a past tense or historical context. Colonialism is a current, ongoing practice and process, and we need to build our mindfulness of our present participation. It is also worth noting that land acknowledgements is Indigenous protocol. Now, I'd like to welcome Chancellor Dr. Mike Flores to share the announcement.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Castillo, and what a poignant acknowledgement. I want to thank our colleague, Mona Adania, for that. I want to thank our special guests for being here, and of course, our colleagues and our students who are joining us this morning. As many of you know, studies indicate that serious gaps exist in access for students of color, and also for success for crossing the finish line with regard to higher education nationally within the state and even within a local context. Additionally, awareness has been growing, and we have had increasing conversations that getting into college is not enough, that students need to be able to be successful in the courses they take, need to continue enrollment from term to term, and need to be able to partner with each and every one of us for self-efficacy, and also to ensure that they build the social capital necessary for them to be successful in the future. This is something that we all know well, and we are collectively working to address and ensure student success for each and every one of our students. Dr. Castillo's new role as the inaugural Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer is a direct result of our strategic plan, specifically working to eliminate barriers to enrollment, to close performance gaps, to build trust and talent, to empower our employees and improve the overall student and employee experience, all with an equity-minded approach. It's, as Dr. Castillo noted, and as each and every one of us know, our mission is empowering our diverse communities for success. If we are to realize our mission and better serve populations and students from each and every neighborhood in our community, for them to also be honored and to bring their true selves to our campuses, online, and in engagements with each and every one of us, we have to ensure that we address racism in our own institution and that we each take action to address it individually and collectively. This is why this morning we are excited to announce that we are partnering with the Association of American Colleges and Universities to establish the Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation, or as we'll increasingly call it, TRHT initiative at the Alamo Colleges District. These efforts will acknowledge, honor, and celebrate the unique cultures, challenges, and advantages of our institution and organization as we work to establish equity-minded practices that advance each and every one of our students and our diverse communities. By establishing these safe and inclusive spaces, TRHT activities will convene students, staff, faculty, administrators, and later community partners to co-create an inclusive framework and move beyond conversation into actions, sustainable transformation, and racial equity. Now, Dr. Castillo and our guests are going to talk more specifically about these activities, but the goals are to create a positive narrative about race, to promote racial healing activities, and to erase institutional barriers to equitable treatment. These goals support greater access for our students and better outcomes overall. While this initiative that we launched today and will engage in over many years is an assurance to our students and employees of our support of equity-mindedness, it is most importantly a commitment to our community. In addressing race-related issues, we prepare and support the next generation of leaders to build just and equitable communities. And I think that in and of itself is very significant. We also further our work to eliminate barriers for each and every one of our students to strive closer to our moonshot of ending poverty through education. So I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us today, and I look forward to the work that we will do together to support our students' success. Thank you, Dr. Castillo, and thank you, colleagues, for being here this morning.
Thank you, Dr. Flores, for your passion and commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. And I appreciate your willingness to lead with courage and to champion these efforts. While we are making this exciting announcement today, many employees have started this work already. Employees across the district attended a TRHT Institute to learn more about racial healing activities and how to facilitate change at their respective colleges. For students or employees who are interested, there will be more opportunities to become involved as the program progresses. Additionally, all 5 colleges and the District Support Office are creating and leading various diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts to help extend work across our organization. I want to thank those who have dedicated their time and efforts thus far, and I look forward to our continued partnership and teamwork across to accomplish our shared goals. With that, I would like to welcome Dr. Robert Vela, President of San Antonio College, to share with us the future impact of TRHT at the college.
Thank you, Dr. Castillo. Good morning, colleagues, and good morning, students. SAC has been at the forefront of truth, racial healing, and transformation efforts since 2020. We understand the imperative of building equity throughout our college. Our Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusive Excellence has led the way with community discussions and training workshops, and has connected with more than 500 employees and students. Being selected as the TRHT pilot school is a testament to SAC's commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion. This new center will provide a springboard for an even higher level of engagement on our campus and within our community. At SAC, we're proud to serve many marginalized populations, such as the LGBTQ community and Dreamers, and we are currently fostering an alliance to support our Native urban students. Since 1985, we have been a Hispanic serving institution and recognized for being one of the best colleges for Latinx students by Hispanic Outlook magazine. In addition, we've been recognized by the Campus Pride Index as one of the top 8 community colleges in the nation for LGBTQ inclusion. We are fully committed to inclusion by valuing and supporting these diverse students through food, housing, emergency aid, scholarships, and more. In collaboration with the American Association of Colleges and Universities and with the generosity of the Trellis Foundation, our new TRHT Center will be the hub of events, activities, and dialogue, and it will further promote racial equity and healing on our campus and in the community. The center will prepare and empower the next generation of leaders and thinkers to break down racialized practices, address historical and contemporary effects of racism, and promote transformational and sustainable change. I congratulate our SAC team of faculty, staff, and administrators who have worked hard and can now see their efforts come to fruition. We look forward to helping the Alamo Colleges District to build similar centers at each of our colleges. We hope you'll join us for the phenomenal lineup of DEI events and activities at SAC this spring, including a visit from Andrea Vocab Sanderson for a special poetry workshop. We're off to a great start on an exciting and inspiring new chapter of SAC's history as we work together to build a more equitable community. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vela, for your ongoing support and leadership regarding DE&I. We look forward to hearing about the successes at San Antonio College. Next, I'd like to welcome back a very familiar face to the Alamo Colleges District, Andrea Vocab Sanderson, and also welcome Nicholas Blevins, lead vocalist and guitarist from the Foreign Arm, who will perform together. Andrea Vocab Sanderson, a San Antonio native, is the first Black poet laureate of San Antonio. Her dynamic performance style is an originally crafted fusion of spoken word poetry, hip hop, and soulful rhythm and blues. She is the recipient of numerous awards, including Dream Voice, People's Choice Award, Best Live Entertainment Band Musician of the Year by the 17th Annual SEA Awards, and more. She was also recently named the Best Local Poet 2021 by the San Antonio Current. She serves as a teaching artist for Gemini Inc., San Antonio's Writing Arts Center. In 2021, she received an Academy of American Poets Laureate Fellowship. Vocab's debut book is entitled She Lives in Music and was released by Flower Song Press in February of 2020. And her music is available on all music streaming platforms. Nicholas Blevins is the primary lyricist and songwriter for the celebrated San Antonio soul group, The Foreign Arm. He is also a founding member of the group alongside vocalist Andrea Vocab Sanderson. They have performed at increasingly unique venues and events and are the recipient of several awards and honors, including San Antonio Soundgarden's You Vote, They Win contest. The band has performed at the prestigious Tobin Center for the Performing Arts, accompanied by the Youth Orchestra of San Antonio. They have also curated multidisciplinary events to packed audiences such as Soul Food Sundays, The Foreign Feet, and Formula for the Future with Dream Week Commission. In 2019, The Foreign Arm performed at the inauguration ceremonies for San Antonio City Council. We welcome them today for this special performance. Take it away.
Good morning. This song is called A Light. Feel free to snap along.
Take it for granted. I got a good spirit inside me, but sometimes it doesn't got it. Need some common sense about it. I know that sometimes I can be guided, but I'm working on it. I just hope that I can see it. In the picture of a salad, not escape the backwards on purpose, so it's something. What can I say? I'm working on it, but it's like my psyche's on it. I just leave it all on the floor. I'll be the change. Yeah. You be the change that you wanna see. I'll be the change. It begins in me. I don't take it for granted. That first stop is longer than I thought it'd be. It's gone from simply got the combination that I found in quality. Don't waste my time on those that bother me. The ones that's probably robbing music. I puzzle with honesty. Make this harder than it has to be. Dropping nasty consequences. Come with this, come back to me. Oh, we can drink to our health and we don't need anyone else. I'm gonna be good to everyone that I see because I just can't help but be here. When it comes back around, it couldn't have kept me with my damn hand out. I've been busy with my man out. I want my reputation to precede me so that when these people see me, know the heart but just got easy. And I wanna fill every role all the time. Make the ones I love close to heart, close to mine. Yeah, I'll be the change. You be the change that you wanna see. I'll be the change. It begins in me. You're gonna be the change, yeah. And I'll be the change. You be the change. You be. I'll be the change. You be the change. You be the change that you want to see in the world today. The light shines in you and it shines in me. Oh, yeah. I acknowledge the Humanos, Tonkawa, Lipan Apache, Hualgan Tecan people for the land on which I stand. It's time to be free, 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 so free.
you ever apologized for being your authentic self? When was the last time you put your identity on the shelf? You suffocated your mother's accent, watered your worth down, smothered your father's surname. Your asphyxiation came with an abbreviation. You permitted the demolition of your majesty for a pronounceable nickname. You allowed others the right to choke the life right out of your culture for convenience sake. You licked the erasure right off their lips, put a wet nap to your fingertips after smudging apologies all over your history like rouge lipstick. You can't keep politely shrinking yourself and excusing your ancestors' evidence from your day to day. What would your grandmother say about the grammatical error that you've become? Are you none the wiser or all the more foolish for the ellipsis typed across your character? Do the best parts of you even matter? Don't scatter the ashes of your best attributes. You shatter that mirror into shards. You time capsule the painful memories of your youth, bashful on your breath. What is left of you? Sitting across the table is your shame. You blame your whole body for being built with a physique now carved of guilt. Let no one intimidate you out of your uniqueness. You inherited the abundance of family traits. Cherish the vessel and let none of your heritage be displaced. Do not place a quilt over your majesty, tolerating blanketing statements that classify you in ambiguity. The lilt in your tongue is not nearly as heavy as you commiserate over. A legacy of beauty rests heavy upon your shoulders. Are you even brave enough to stomach the immigrant boat ride it took your lineage to cross over? Be bold, not a bold over. Decolonize your shivering mouth. Sever the oppression from your skin and reclaim the sacredness of your kin. There is a liberation waiting to be uttered on the tip of your tongue. Do not swallow it. Let the bile of new beginnings burn out the things you can't and you can unlearn in this lifetime. There is so much you need to learn in this lifetime, and know this: you never have to do anything to earn your ethnicity and your identity, but you can afford yourself the luxury of unveiling the mystery. Discover your history, be free. For there are parts of your identity that are gasping for reclamation. Issue your own self a proclamation. Declare this a season of emancipation and be free. Celebrate the state of being in which you reside. Now is not the time to swallow your pride. You've got to be free. You've got to be free. You gotta be free.
Vocab, Nicholas, that was a powerhouse performance. That was moving, exceptional, beautiful. And it really sets the stage for this event this morning. I think you have touched the mindset and heart set of those that are in sharing your wisdom and your beauty today. So thank you so much for blessing us with this powerful performances. I know that we all have been moved by these incredible relevant lyrics of the song and the poem. There is so much to take in from it, from the self-reflection to owning every aspect of who we are. These performances bring wisdom, passion, and creativity to our event. What you all created and shared for us this morning speaks so clearly to why we are gathered here this morning together. We are thankful for you both and know that so much more greatness will be shared by you both. Thank you again so much. Now, I'd like to welcome Mimoa, Racial Healing and Racial Equity Consultant, for a special conversation about racial healing circles. Mimoa provides training, facilitation, and coaching support for individuals and organizations in planning, leadership, and equity transformation. She is passionate about democracy building, heart leadership, and making visible the interconnectedness among peoples. Some of her clients are local and state elected officials, community and national foundations, colleges and universities, and nonprofit organizations undertaking equity-centered transformation. She was the president and executive director of Asian Americans Advancing Justice, AAJC, and Vice President for Public Policy and Advocacy for the Asian and Pacific Islander American Health Forum, both of which are leading Asian American civil rights organizations based in Washington, D.C. Prior to her work in D.C., she was an attorney and a member of the Minnesota State Senate. She was the first Hmong American to be elected to a state legislature in the United States. She served 3 terms before retiring in 2010 and served as the chair of the State Judiciary Committee in her final term. My was born in Laos and came to the United States in 1978 as a refugee. She grew up in the Midwest, attended Brown University, received her MPA from the LBJ School of Public Affairs at the University of Texas at Austin, and earned her JD from the University of Minnesota Law School. She is a recognized public speaker, leadership mentor, and relationship weaver. Welcome, Me. We are so excited to have you here today.
Oh, Eric, I am so honored and so excited to be with all of you this morning. Thank you for inviting me and for including me in this amazing conversation.
Absolutely. You know, Me, how are you doing this morning?
I am so excited. I love the poems and the music. And as I was listening and reflecting, there's so much richness in the lyric and in the poetry. But the one phrase that kept ringing in my head was the phrase that says, "It begins with me." And I feel like that's our call to action. I feel like that was my call to action. And I feel like that's the purpose for why I am in the space with all of you this morning. So thank you. Thank you for that.
Absolutely. You know, what a tremendously beautiful way to transition to our conversation. You know, me and our Racial Healing Circle Practitioner Institute, part of the Racial Healing Circle was to have an opening piece to the circle. And, you know, I think that this just did that so well and so beautifully for us, you know, what vocab and what Nicholas did to set the stage for what we're going to share with each other and share of ourselves and share with the audience members. So I think that the language of hyphenation, you know, the language of hiding ourselves and disconnecting from our ancestors and now working to build narrative change by owning those stories weaves so beautifully into racial healing work. And so I'm honored. It's beautiful that it unfolded that way. And so, you know, you and I met at the Racial Healing Circle Practitioner Institute back in December. And Mona and I and Ruth and Dr. Martinez were so blessed by that opportunity. You know, we reconvened and felt so connected to your spirit and to how you speak of this work. It's so obvious and apparent that this is work that you embody and that you share so gracefully with everybody. So we're happy to connect with you now with Alamo Colleges District.
Yay, so excited, so excited.
Wonderful. We are too. And so, you know, I've sent you some questions ahead of time for us, but really this is a conversation. So we'll start with questions and then we can go off from there. But first can you share with us a little bit about your life story and how you arrived at the practice of racial equity and racial healing circles?
Yeah. Well, you know, in the short bio that you shared with the group, you talked a little bit about the trajectory of my journey. And I say to people that it is a miracle and it is quite amazing. And I don't know that I'm necessarily unique in feeling that sense of mystery and the sense of deep appreciation for the fact that in this moment, we're in this space with each other, right? I'm cognizant that not only among us, the panelists who are here, but among the 300 plus people who have joined us in this screen, that each of us carry within us this amazing, mysterious journey that somehow universe conspired to maneuver so that we can all be in this space with each other in this very moment. And the reason I say that is because when I was born 50 some years ago, my parents would never have imagined, right, that deep in a jungle village, deep in northern Laos, where there's no running water or electricity, on a dirt floor, thatched roof, bamboo hut, that within my lifetime, I could actually end up in a place where we are all having meetings like in virtual space. So it is a moment to pause and to appreciate the miracle of this moment, at least for me, right? And that the journey as a refugee from our refugee village across the treachery of the civil unrest in Laos, across at the early hours of the morning across the Mekong River, sneaking into Thailand, living in a refugee camp, and then somehow being resettled in this country and surviving all of that. And then to be sitting in this seat, having a conversation with all of you about healing and equity, that in of itself is a miracle. And so I sit here so deeply appreciative and not only the turns and the churnings that have happened in my life, but so deeply appreciative that because of those turns and churnings that I've been invited into a space where I get to bring all of that into the work that we do with each other. So how did I go from being a refugee kid to being a lawyer, to being a state senator, a nonprofit executive director, and now engaging people in racial healing and racial equity work? And it's because for so much of my life, I feel like I have been living in survivor mode. I've been living in striver mode, and I feel like for the remainder of my life, I need to be in thriver mode. Because for so much of my life, I think I've been reacting to the systems that limit and constrain us. And I came to the racial healing and racial equity work because racial healing in and of itself is a process of liberation, allowing me to be able to say, I can pause and I can take stock. And the racial equity work is a journey. It's a process that I think invites all of us, myself included, to be thinking about what we're running towards, what we're walking towards, not just looking backwards about what we're reacting to, right? Not what we're against, but walking forward and running towards what we are for and what we want it to be. And so if you think about the work that we all engage in around systems change and dismantling, sometimes it gets so tiring, right? And we all burn out. I think because we're always feeling like we're reacting to, we're always against. And I came into this work because the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, with the establishment of the Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Framework, and the work around racial healing and relationship building, and the work of using the racial healing circle as a tool to begin the work to create the spaces to pause and to think about what do we want to run towards, and what do we want to be for, which is a really big shift, right? But it's also liberating and it is healing to be on that trajectory of the journey.
Absolutely. You know, I love the language of liberation as a part of this process. You know, it shifts our mindset, and you said this in Practitioner Institute, shifts our heart set as well. And that's so beautiful and powerful, thinking about, you know, this liberatory work as a decolonial process. You know, how we think about what we want to construct for ourselves and for our lives, bringing our full selves into the picture, understanding who our full self is. Yeah. And I find that so beautiful. And it's something that we're not always taught in systems, whether it's schools and other places. You know, we're not taught to bring our full selves into the picture. Yeah. But it's through the work of racial equity and racial healing, which we acknowledge who we are, where we've come from, and the way that you've so beautifully wrote and shared your narrative with us today. I think that expression of self so beautifully, so powerfully, is a practice of freedom, is a practice of decolonizing the way that we present and share ourselves. And it invites other folks to also do that work with us. Yeah. And it hopefully, you know, the work of sharing our authentic selves with others, that liberatory practice, will then invite other people to see that availability of us with them as well.
Yeah. And you know, Eric, that process, people say that, well, why can't you just do it? But the fact of the matter is that it's intimidating. It's a little bit scary. And it takes some practice in being willing to enter into intimate relationships with ourselves and with each other, right? That liberation process is first and foremost, it's not an external force liberating us, but it is about having the luxury. And I do think that when people talk about privilege, this is what I mean, right? There are some of us that who are economically and socially and culturally privileged, where we have access to the luxury of space and time to indulge in self-space and self-time. There are a lot of us come from families and legacies and traditions. And I don't mean this in terms of black, white, or, skin color or cultures, but I just mean that there are a lot of us who come from families or cultures or traditions where we are not practiced or we don't have access to the self spaces, the disruptive spaces, that quiet space to unlearn, right? This quick, fast pace, always reacting, always running forward. We don't have access to that because we can't, or because we just don't know how. And so the process of liberation, both self-liberation, but also liberation, co-liberation of one another, right, is a process that it will take us to be intentional about creating the spaces, entering to those spaces, being willing to risk a little bit, and to begin to practice what it means to be in intimate relationship, both with ourselves and with each other. And it takes practice, right? It doesn't just happen. That's what the Racial Healing Circle space offers, is a little bit of a taste of that. And so much more. But I think, at minimum, that's what it offers, is an opportunity to practice that.
Absolutely, and what you're sharing, I could not help but circle back to Vocab and Nicholas when they talked about I be the change. And it's that inward introspection, that critical self-reflection. And again, the space and place and the privilege to do that. And also the understanding of how to do that and share that space with other people. And I'm so glad that you mentioned the concept of healing, racial healing circles, because the intention and desire for that and the construction of that space is meant to introduce that conversation, to facilitate that space so well. So, we may have audience members here this morning who may be a little bit less familiar with racial healing circles. So can you talk to us about what healing circles are and how race enters into that conversation?
Yeah. So as you have probably surmised from our conversation leading up to this question, I would say that the Racial Healing Circle is a facilitated methodology that invites in diverse groups of people to be in conversation with each other, where we ask for their consent to show up, to be willing to stay for the duration of the time that we're together. And in the space or time that we're together, we invite people into their heart spaces to share their lived experiences with one another. We don't make you go to places that you don't want to go, but we do craft different prompts to invite people to share their lived experiences. We consider that a slowdown or disruptive space to practice, right? As I said, what it means to be in relationship with each other. And so it really is just a duration of time with a beginning and end. And we have a set of group agreements to sort of guide how we engage with each other in that space. And then the facilitators just introduce a series of prompts. And it is the magic, I call it, the magic or the amazing thing that happens in that circle space is both in the way that we shape the prompts to invite you to share, first to reflect on your own story, and then how to share it with another person. But then there's also an invitation for the entire group to reflect on the collective stories. in particular, to really lean in and to reflect about what aspects of our stories really resonate with one another, or what about each other's story, lifts us up or inspires us. And the act of reflecting actually leads to a deep sense of affirmation, and leads to, I think, at the end of the circle experience, everyone just feels like, oh my God, we have so much in common, right? We have so much in common. And so that's what the racial healing circle process methodology is that it is a disruptive space that is facilitated in a very process way. But through the process, it leads to people being able to practice and to feel what it's like to deeply connect with somebody. Sometimes they don't even know, total complete strangers who show up in the space. And when people leave the circle, it's a way of demonstrating that we have the innate capacity to be in deep relationship with each other. And if in a 2.5 hour, three circle period, you can reach that level of that depth of intimacy and connection to a group of sometimes complete strangers, imagine what we could do if we were to practice that every single day with every single person around us, right? That's what the racial healing circle experience is.
And that's powerful, that deep relationship with other people. And as I participated in the racial healing circle with you, I remember that and typically I identify myself more as an introverted person, a very private person, someone who for various reasons keeps set of distances, and in that space, when I entered into that space, just the entire methodology opens up the opportunity for you to and invite you, and it's totally by choice, the amount that you share. And I just remember feeling connected. I remember just feeling as if, although I knew very few people in the room, there was just an energy of the space and a willingness to connect. There's an interest in connecting and sharing and understanding more. And I think that when we separate into the dyads or the smaller groups to have those conversations, I think that was a very an easier way for me to engage in that conversation, of these prompts. And and these prompts run a wide range, and so it really allows us to sort of think about a lot of things, and we, as the driver of our own responses and of our lives, can choose what we share. And I think that when the person is listening with that, I think you called it deep listening, and it's that practice and process of deep listening where what I was sharing felt valuable to the receiver of that information. There was no disruption, there was no judgment in that space. And I remember thinking, this person is hearing what I'm sharing. And in that moment of that was the intimacy of connection. Yes. And it was that kind of deep listening that made me want to connect more and share more. And that was such a beautiful experience. And I think when we all walked away from that circle, just felt this, I'm not even sure how to qualify the language for this, but it just felt a greater global connection with people based upon our differences, and respect of those differences, and a shared joy for the fact that we are sharing and inhabiting this world around us. And now with that new connection, how can we build that deep listening and deep connection with other folks around us?
Yeah. And the other piece, Eric, that you asked from the earlier question, I do want to take an opportunity to talk about that, which is people often say, you call this a racial healing circle. And yet, in some circle spaces, perhaps the kind of prompts that we introduce for conversation is not explicitly, right, about race. And so people would say, well, why do you call it a racial healing circle? How does race or racism show up in the circle space? And I just want to share that the circle is the anti-racism tool, because the solution or the cure is that deep, intimate connection that you have to another person. I just think about the way that I live my life, and that sometimes, just think about this. How many of you have a deep, intimate relationship with an Asian American person in your life? How many of you have a deep, intimate relationship with an African American or Native American or Latino person in your life? How many of you have a deep, deep, intimate relationship with, you know, a white person or a person of Caucasian descent in your life, right? I mean, if you think about it in that way, that some of us come from very multi-culti families, and yet do we have the intentional framed language to engage with each other about our identity experiences? Or many of us live in out of survival, so no judging here, right? But many of us live in segregated communities, right? Many of we shop in the shops that we shop. We go to the places we go to the work that we go to. But in our social and cultural lives, right? We are very segregated from each other. So by the functionality of how we live our lives sometimes, when you take stock, right? I'm not saying go out and find your one Asian American person that you pointed to say, yeah, I am with it because I have one Asian American friend, right? I am just saying that on its face, if we do sort of this little a mini audit, right? It just goes to show, and it's not, doesn't mean that we're bad people. It just means that the patterns of our lives have conditioned us into siloed and segregated lives. And because we have been put into those conditions, then we don't often have the opportunities, right, to pause and to take stock and to say, I want to be really intentional about having a deep, intimate relationship with people who are different from me, right? And in some ways, the racial healing circle space is a structured opportunity to say, I just want to learn how to practice how to do that, right? What would it feel like if I could be in and not necessarily safe? Remember, I talked about that. The circle space is not necessarily a safe space, but it is a compassionate space that's facilitated by two experienced facilitators to say, we will create the container for you to experiment, to try on for size, to practice what it means to dip your toe into an intimate relationship with somebody who's very different from you, right? And so by definition, because the racial healing circle is designed to bring together diverse people from diverse backgrounds, sometimes in some circles that I co-facilitate, when an African-American elder and a young Asian-American dreamer connect with each other very deeply, that may be the very first time that either of them have ever had the opportunity to be in an intimate relationship with each other. That's when the racial shows up in the racial healing circle, when I'm able to facilitate that deep connection. Yeah, that's when the racial shows up in the racial healing circle.
Beautifully said, Me. You know, I remember, you know, as I was entering into the circle and reading the prompts and thinking to myself, you know, so, you know, as me as a scholar, practitioner, activist, trying to kind of see that, okay, where is the racial in this? And then as I was participating in the space, I realized, well, it's my experiential knowledge. It's what I'm sharing. That's my Chicano lens that I bring to my life story, and what I offer as the gift of my story to other people. And then it's in that unpacking in that conversation where that racial for me showed up, you know. And you said something so interesting, you know, that you said many interesting things, but one thing that I think that I want to circle into for a moment is, you know, you said that we're patterned and conditioned, you know, into these spaces and places. And so I think of scholar Bobby Harrow, who wrote about the cycle of socialization and the cycle of liberation. You know, from such an early space of our lives, you know, from womb to life, we are receiving patterns of information. We're socialized into structures and ideas and things, you know, and that is what shapes our worldview of things. And so for me, I feel as if racial healing circles are that opportunity to shift to or have an aha moment that has your inquiry shifting to a cycle of liberation. And so for those that are on our listening today, this morning with us, and maybe curious about participating in a racial healing circle, having heard this information, what insight or encouragement perspective can you offer those individuals?
I think that I would just say the invitation is open. When Eric and Mona and the THT Campus Center practitioners offer an opportunity, I would say step into it. And step into it with an open heart, with an open mind, and try it on for size. Try it on for size. Just show up. and be present and participate. And then make a decision about whether the circle space is the appropriate space for you to be on your own self journey, or the journey with either yourself or with others. So I just want to invite a spirit of curiosity. And if you're even curious, then step into the circle and just give it a try. Because the way that the circle is designed is that you bring whoever you show up that day is the you who show up in the circle. And the facilitators will design the circle experience to meet you wherever you are. There won't be blaming, shaming, there won't be thumping, but there will be an expectation that you will be engaged. And engagement doesn't mean you are the person who talk all the time. Engagement may be the person who doesn't say a single word throughout the entire experience, because we know that they're sitting there processing and receiving and engaging in the process. So give it a try.
So well said. You know that I've incorporated this language into my daily practice of deep listening and the language of mindset and heart set.
Yeah.
You know, we work in higher education, and so, you know, post-secondary education, so we're formalized structures of education, and so, you know, it's the language around that is typically around what you learn, what you can gain, the credential and the experience. And so this racial healing exercise and these activities are a connection of mind and heart.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a deep rootedness that wants to root itself in our lives and really kind of help us to unpack that piece of who we are, that wholeness of who we are. And even though it's a 2.5 hour racial healing circle, and I love that you have talked about it as a container and an opening and a closing, I think that is beautiful to understand. Like, this is the gift of a racial healing circle, and your gift to us as those who are recipients of your story and your space. And I think that's beautiful. I will say, so I want to ask you before we shift if there are any questions and answers in the chat. For folks that are listening, feel free to drop something in the Q&A function. But for audience members who may have an interest in facilitating racial healing circles and getting connected in that capacity, what's helpful for them to keep in mind? Are there particular things they should consider as they may embark in that journey?
You know, Eric, I would think that the easiest, maybe simplest thing to do is to have the group agreements, the touchstones that we have available to folks to look at. If you have a curiosity about, you know, wanting to take on the racial healing circle practice and be a co-facilitator, read through the touchstones of the group agreements, because I really feel like these touchstones that talks about being 100% present, being able to listen deeply and suspending your own judgments, you know, being able to identify your assumptions and mind your fixers, so that you're not in the space to fix people. You're showing up to facilitate. Being able to maintain confidentiality, being able to turn to wonder. I call these the wisdom of the touchstones or the group agreements that you will bring into the space. And as you read through this, right, if you feel like, yeah, I have a curiosity and desire to hold spaces, to bring people together and to discover not only themselves, but each other in that process. And yes, I think I can adhere to being the steward, right? The keeper of the spirit of the touchstones. Then I want to invite you into that space, because I think that those are the kind of individuals that would be amazing co-facilitators in holding and creating and keeping that container for the participants to discover themselves and each other.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Mi. And so in keeping in the spirit of opening and closing, wanting to be respectful of our audience members' times and knowing that they have to disconnect, we're getting a lot of wonderful comments in here, recognizing and giving you praise and recognition of your gift of your conversation this morning. And so I want to thank you for that, folks. And I know that there are some questions that are being populated in the chat right now. And so if we do not have an opportunity to answer all of them, please know that we will make sure that we circle back. And if you have any additional questions, you're absolutely welcome to reach out to me. I'll make sure to put my email in the chat. There is a question about how folks can be a part of a racial healing circle. And so I will say that that information will be coming to you very briefly in the end of this conversation. So I do want to, thank you, Mi, so much. Any final piece you want to share with us as we close our segment of this conversation?
Oh, I just want to say thank you all so much. I'm really looking forward to opportunities to meet some of you. My best wishes to you, Eric, as you embark on this new role. And congratulations to the leadership for having the wisdom to bring the TRHT Campus Center to the colleges. And I think it's going to be an amazing journey. So thank you all so much for inviting me to be with you today.
Absolutely, me. Thank you so much. We are blessed with you and are looking forward to connecting with you in the future. So next, I would like to welcome back Mona Aldana Ramirez. She joins us again to speak specifically to SAC's forthcoming racial healing activities and various DEI efforts across the organization. And she will also share how you can become involved in the district's future activities.
Thank you, Dr. Castillo. Thank you, Mimoa and Vocab and Nicholas Blevins for blessing us today with your presence and your knowledge and giving us all that you can today. We thank you. I am looking forward to working with all faculty, staff, students, and the community members as Alamo Colleges works on our Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Centers. Before we log off today, I invite every one of you to engage in one of the many opportunities that are being offered throughout Alamo Colleges to get involved in this work. Lean in where you can. There are many good folks doing good trouble along this equity transformation that we're on, and making each of our colleges and as well as the district support offices more diverse, more inclusive, and moving towards equitable outcomes for all. At Lakeview, I want to give a shout out to Rebecca Alejos and the allies of NLC. They have upcoming events such as the common read of the Little Book of Racial Healing. They're working on racial healing circles with American Indians of Texas. They are rescheduling their drum circle. How cool is that? At Palo Alto College, we have fabulous people like Dr. Delilah Marquez and Professor Hector Garza working on their Access, Inclusion, and Diversity Committee so they can gather people throughout the semester. And they're currently working on land acknowledgement for themselves at Palo Alto College. At St. Philip's College, the good people of St. Philip's College are doing trainings on bystander interventions, creating inclusive workplaces, and also training on cultural humility. The SPC Faculty Senate Anti-Racism Book Club is happening now. They're looking at The Blind Spot by Banaji and Greenwald. At San Antonio College, our Equity Committee has a lineup of events and activities happening throughout the semester. It includes common reads, documentary screenings, intro to equity, unconscious bias, microaggressions. We're teaching each other how to use our pronouns, what's the purpose of land acknowledgements to be more inclusive of all our students. Northwest Vista District Support Office are also having their own things happening around truth, racial healing, and transformation, and are planning activities for you to be involved. So we invite you. There is a link in the chat for you to sign up, give up your name, give up your location, let us know where you want to get plugged in at. For he, she, or they who seek equity must do the work of equity. Sign up using the link in the chat and receive information on all the activities going around in your college. You'll also get information on DEI, Truth, Racial Healing, Transformation Centers. Before I log off, I want to say thank you to Dr. Flores and Dr. Bella for giving us the privilege of Alamo Colleges to hold spaces where we can work on equity. Y'all, this is a privilege. Let's all be part of this. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Castillo.
Mona, thank you so much for being an outstanding partner with this work for TRHT. As you can hear, there is a groundswell and a reservoir of outstanding DEI work being done across the organization. I am honored and I count myself blessed to be able to work with each of the colleges and DSO to make these efforts successful. I want to thank all of our speakers and guests today for joining us on this special occasion. And I really appreciate everybody involved in helping to make this morning's event a success. Thank you so much. Please remember to register at the link that Mona just mentioned in the chat and to participate in more racial healing and DEI activities across the Alamo Colleges District. In closing, I'd like to invite you to join us in these efforts. I encourage you to be part of the conversation and the healing. The work we have to do in our institution and in our community begins with each of us. Thank you and have a wonderful day.